cacao.
That works for you? Yeah, I got cacao. You got cacao?
Yeah, we got cacao.
Yo, Danny from La Ruca.
Yeah.
And the tribes that she was able to acquire this cacao from. Thank you for contributing to the ceremonial magic that is the completion of Costa Rica.
Yeah.
And simultaneous send off.
Yep.
To Colombia.
Yeah, dude. Cheers.
Wow.
To the best story ever told, dude.
To the best story ever told.
To the best story ever told.
Cheers.
Yeah.
It's been a while since we've done a Till the End podcast.
Yeah, last time we were smoking weed, being assailed on all fronts by monkeys.
The tribe is
outside of Montezuma.
Yeah.
Potluck dinner, family gathering, barbecue of monkeys.
Just,
I was like, are they
climbing?
Are they coming for us?
It looked like it at one point.
Yeah. So that was that, and now we're back, baby. This is Till the End.
Yeah. Wow.
So,
what a life we've been living since that last podcast. But yeah, you're right. Like this show is like encompassing, the couple weeks since the last show we did, but also.
But this is just this is like
totally
the Costa Rica recap, basically, or not even recap from like some sort of chronological synopsis, but more so when you take a trip. It's kind of like if you equate it to, we watched 300, the movie 300. Epic movie.
So many lessons.
Such an archetypical story of like, just like the masculine, like thing in life. And we can get into that.
What to strive towards, but also what to watch out for.
What to watch out for. But the big part of that was there's certain rites of passage. And in that, as a little boy, he's just ruthlessly fighting and beating the shit out of other Spartan kids.
Shit beat out of him. But...
And then at a certain age, they need to send him out, push him out, out into the wilderness on his own. And he's got to come back. He's got to come back with a dead wolf.
Mother's teeth.
He's got to come back with a dead fucking wolf from the mountains in the cold.
Or
don't come back. Don't come back. Come back with a dead wolf that you've killed, or don't come back. And the whole point of that is the archetype of going out on your own, and then there's the returning home, and there's what you've brought back with you. So what we want to bring to you right now, to the best of our ability, is we want to bring to you the dead wolf that we've gathered. We've been beating the shit out of sit for the last.
It's been a dead horse for a long time.
For the last 2.5 months now. Yeah. Totally. So I mean, what's your wolf that you're bringing back, bro?
I don't know if that's where I'm ready to start, man. I don't know if
start where
I'm ready to start.
Start where you're ready to start.
What is the dead wolf that I'm bringing back from Costa Rica?
You're like, dude, you would have thought I was scripted.
Yeah, so you know what I would just say is, that in my experience of Costa Rica, the biggest lesson that I learned is I can't make a mistake. Jeez. And the reason I say that is because there's been so many points of this trip, like from the outside, like as an example, I know that people back in Toronto, people back in Canada, people back that I know from home, family, friends, like everyone's going through their own challenges right now. And like you'd think just because we're here in Costa Rica, just because the beach is right beside us, we wouldn't be experiencing hardship or adversity or telling ourselves stories about why we're this, why we're that.
And by the way, I think the important caveat to what you're saying is there's from a certain lens, you can't make a mistake, and there's a certain inherent harmony in everything. Not that what he's not saying is not to learn from things that you would do differently in this now certain situation in the past, but to not.
I was trying to get to that.
I was trying to stole my thunder. Okay.
No, it's all good, man. No, I was just gonna say, because like all of the things that could be viewed as mistakes, I'm the ones that I learned the most from.
For sure.
Like when I was hardest on myself, looking back, sure, I could have been more gentle with myself. But if I didn't go through the inner dialogue of experiencing it, breaking it down, being pissed off at myself, and then deciding to do things differently, like the mistakes I couldn't alchemize into future lessons, which is the whole point of this trip. Like you said, we're like in an exploration mode, right? The thing that inspires me, an empowering way of looking at my life, is that I am an aperture in which the universe discovers itself. And through that lens, it's in the lens of discovery. Mm-hmm. It opens up possibility to anything that I experience as a negative emotion actually can be alchemized later as a positive experience, because I learned from those experiences. I was literally in the phases of exploration.
And you can get to completion with that around being hard on yourself. and then realizing that for the lesson, the phase that you were in, whatever wolf you were fighting, that was just a quintessential part of that discovery for yourself. And then now to kind of have completion and bring it to the present and say, I'm making the decision, whatever you want to call it, to decide that I don't want to live in that like self-berating, like masochistic, yeah, it worked out in the past and I'm good with that. No regrets. Everything happened as it needed to happen to get to this realization. But the wolf I want to bring back is I don't need to have to be stressed and hard on myself, and give yourself a little bit more benefit of the doubt, right?
Yeah, no, like the experiences, like as an example, probably the most fun that I had in Costa Rica was like the last 4 or 5 days that we've had.
Yeah.
And it just like, I felt so comfortable and like in a groove and like living on my edge of what I want to do, what I'm capable of, and what excites me, like all these things. But I wouldn't have been able to get to that if it wasn't for moments where I was questioning myself and uncertain and insecure. And so
I'm just
glad to be able to reconcile those experiences where they were really positive ultimately.
Yeah. To kind of like what occurred to me in terms of the formatting of everything you just said, and then moving the conversation forward. It sounds like, from my understanding of you and then the last couple of days, they were some of the best days. And they also weren't necessarily like peak experience things. They might've been like, they were like most closely related to like the nature of like the North Star of what we're getting to. So we're like how you're going to end up wanting to spend a lot of the days, like in terms of the ratio of like doing work and healthy and nature and friends and food and all that kind of stuff. Right. And then, is that kind of what you meant?
Yeah, well, from it's an interesting take in terms of peak experience, because like peak experience is really just like if you're fully present. Because if you're fully present, then everything is exactly as it is.
Yeah. Like we were busing for 6 hours yesterday from Puerto Viejo, which is the Caribbean beach town where we had the last fun couple days, to near the airport in San Jose, Costa Rica now. And I remember in terms of that, I had my sunglasses on and I was like curled against the window, and we had smoked some weed. I did like a little bit of the last little bit of the mushrooms, and it was pouring rain.
Yeah.
The prophetic fallacy, the literary device of like everything you see out in front of you is a reflection, but it was like beautiful too. And I was just like zoomed in on the water droplets falling and branching away like a family tree down to the infinite realms of chaos theory, twisting out into the little realms. And I was just totally absorbed by that. And
is that not a peak experience?
Yeah, that's what I'm just trying to. I'm giving an example of how you're right.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, perfect example. Just peak experiences. And it's cool with the pathetic fallacy is like when we were coming into Puerto Viejo as well. When we were driving from San Jose to Puerto Viejo with Kat, it was pouring rain too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's also an element of we're in the tropics, and so like obviously it's pouring rain.
And here's you don't have enough information to know that what you're upset about, you should be upset about. There's some fucking heat for you, because as Jonathan just mentioned, we drove in from San Jose to Puerto Viejo, and
we got the double cup.
And we got the double cup, and it was pouring rain. And our friend Kat, shout out Kat from South Africa.
Love you.
She drove us.
Total darling.
And we followed the Airbnb directions, and we were going down these like back streets. And it's pouring rain, it's dark, and we're like, where the hell are we going? Like really way out there. And the Airbnb instructions were just bluntly awful.
Most of them
they've all been awful in Costa Rica, to be honest. But this is how it's actually good, the full circle, where
we met Priscilla.
It was very frustrating. It was pouring rain. I was getting everything soaked, running around to these different houses, trying to find this Airbnb to get Wi-Fi, to talk to the host. And this really nice couple let us, Manuel and Priscilla let us under their, maybe we should, whatever. Keep talking about them giving us drugs, but whatever. Because we're in their porch, and basically they gave us an umbrella and gave us some time and Wi-Fi to figure out our situation. But then we didn't have any weed, and we were just gonna like chill and go to bed that night. And then we were hanging out with them, and they're like, "You got weed?" I was like, "Do you have weed? You got weed? Yeah, weed." Anyway,
get weird.
We ended up buying some weed from them, and then we just like got super baked that night before going to bed. And it was just like, dude, how baked and how fun we are, how fun it is of what we're doing right now. You can't disentangle the the frustration of not finding the place. If we had just found the place, then we would be sober right now. And is there any worse reality to face than sobriety? Are you kidding me?
We're just messing with y'all. But I 100% agree, because like you can't untangle what's happened and then get to where you're at.
Yeah.
Like we wouldn't be able to arrive in this present moment. Whoever's listening right now, you would be able to arrive at this present moment if you untangled anything that happened in the past. Like as an example, like I was talking about being hard on myself for some of the experiences that I had in Santa Teresa and not being happy about how I showed up and how I dealt with it. And then when I showed up in Puerto Viejo, one of the very first things that I did was I made a note on my phone that said what I was upset about myself that I did in Santa Teresa, and then how I could do it differently. And then again, we're just in a constant state of exploration and discovery. And I needed to have those experiences for me to have the insight that said, when you get to Puerto Viejo, spend the first day or two just exploring the town and walking around. And we did that.
Yeah.
We just walked around, and we were going into, we literally just walked into every calle and every avenue just to see what was there.
Jordan Peterson talks about that. Like when you get into a new area, he's like, you need to, before you're going to be settled, you need to go explore and like have like an idea. Like when you go into
like having a flashlight in a dark corner.
Yeah, you need, when you're in your new Airbnb or new house, like you need to go look in all the rooms and go looking up on the roof and do all that before you're going to be fully settled. And that's like a microcosm of going into a town.
Yeah, because it's like, imagine entering there and then you have all these what ifs and you never actually scratched the what ifs because you didn't explore it at all. So that was one of the experiences I had, was I made a list of the things that I would want to do, including just literally walking around and exploring and making note of restaurants I might want to go into or shops I might want to come back to. And on that first day, as we were walking around, you ended up reading Fear and Loathing at a cafe. And we've got Hunter with us here for his spiritual guidance in these moments.
Spiritual guidance,
of our spiritual discovery.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we've probably said it before, but it's worth reading. You know, when you read a book and you're like, oh, you see a cover or something, you're like, what's this book about? And you go to the back and it's some sort of independent person giving some brief synopsis, trying to like draw you in.
Yeah.
And in this book, instead, it's literally just a direct passage from the book. And like the point,
provocative.
The point, it's so provocative that like, how are you not going to want to read it?
Sensational,
like,
man.
When you write, the point of like writing a word is to like
get you to
the next word and then a sentence to the next sentence and so on. Anyway, if this doesn't make you want to read this book, like it's just like this resonates with you and piques your interest, or it doesn't. But the back, it says, direct quote from Hunter S. Thompson from the book. Not a novel, by the way. It's an actual. It says
nonfiction journalism.
Yeah, nonfiction journalism.
AKA got fucked up and wrote about it.
He said, we had 2 bags of grass, 75 pellets of mescaline, 5 sheets of high-powered blotter acid, a salt shaker half full of cocaine, and a whole galaxy of multicolored uppers, downers, screamers, laughers. Also a quart of tequila, a quart of rum, a case of Budweiser, a pint of raw ether.
The ether.
What the fuck is ether? And 2 dozen amyls. But the only thing that worried me was the ether. There is nothing in the world more helpless and irresponsible than a man in the depths
of an ether binge. That's funny, because it's only the back of the book, so you don't have a lot of space to write. But like, if you go down a passage or two on the same page when you're reading, he says, "But we're gonna get into the ether
soon enough." Yeah, yeah. This tip of the spear shit.
So
sure.
So Ian and I were walking around Puerto Viejo on like our first day, kind of exploring. I remember actually just like breathing a sigh of relief, because Santa Teresa was so. Such a fast pace, and I felt myself being tense.
And there's an interesting
trying to squeeze the most out of it as possible.
And what you're getting at, like, there's an interesting point around like maybe Santa Teresa being this very prototypical beach town. There's maybe more like with it, and I think in analysis of it, there's like a level of projection and like being insecure and not fully comfortable, and that is why I might not have been fully comfortable in the space. But there was kind of this like. There's this presence in Santa Teresa that's like,
it was happening.
Man, you either it's happening and you got to get with it, or you're like fucking on the outside looking in, and that kind of feeling. And there's obviously something to kind of learn and maybe not succumb to that as much. But I think we both kind of like looked at each other when we got to Puerto Viejo and walked around, and we were like, whew, woo, this is, you can kind of
slower pace,
unload a little bit. It's the Pura
decompress.
Vida, the Caribbean. You can't walk down the street without hearing Bob Marley
yeah.
blowing out of different speakers of different little shops and restaurants and stuff.
Yeah. So I dropped Iain off at this cafe, and we said, hey, we'll meet up in like an hour or something. He was reading Fear and Loathing, and I just like explored a little bit more. I was looking for some Spanish lessons, and one of the people I came across was just like a juice shop. And we saw her yesterday. Her name was Susan, and I didn't buy anything, but I struck up conversation and made a mental note to come back in the morning and buy a juice. And that was kind of the beginning of Puerto Viejo for me, was arriving back there the next day and trying to buy a juice from her. And she was making it very difficult to buy the juice because she was like in a rush, and she was like trying to get all these ingredients together and organize herself. And I was like, is you sure like this is a good time for me to be here? Like, should I come
like
back?
It's just juice. Like I can go.
Like, should I come back later?
If you're dealing with an existential crisis right now,
so
feel free not to make my smoothie.
Yeah. And so I was like, I know there's other places I could go get this. Anyway, so she was just saying like, I'm preparing for an event. Do you want to come? And I said, well, what's it about? And she said, it's like a TED Talk style event where people are bringing together community leaders to talk about community building. How do we design it in a way that makes more sense and that's more beneficial long-term? And I actually had, as I do, a plan for the day. And I was like, these are the things I'm going to get done today.
Seize the day.
And I have to drink my juice first, and then I'm going to go tackle the day. And then I just said to myself, I'm giving myself permission to let go of everything that I had planned and show up at this event, because we're only going to be here for 10 to 14 days or whatever it is. And what a better way I can't think of a better way to meet a bunch of like-minded people all in the same place than a TED Talk style event where people are learning about creativity and personal development and community. And I was like, I'm going to miss out for sure.
That reminds me
if I don't show up at this event.
So Jonathan, to kind of build out the reference here. So Jonathan was telling me before about if you want to get into real estate, then you should be reading a lot of real estate listings and have a really good frame of reference for what is a good deal and what is a bad deal. So then when something comes in your purview on your radar of that is a good deal, hit it while it's hot, take advantage of that situation, then you can do that. And then having that in general with your plans in life, where you have enough reference experience where you're like, I'm going to do all these great things and it's important, but if this just comes in front of me and this opportunity, I gotta be willing to. I gotta be flexible.
To say no.
I gotta be flexible enough to maneuver, and like that's how because opportunities are coming all the time, and it's like creating an eye to recognize it and when to vary and when to stray.
It's like, it reminds me of being three-dimensional. Iain and I have learned about. We did our men's weekend back in 2018, and that mentor talked about being three-dimensional. And it's essentially, the premise is like being able to take action, be empathetic, and not take yourself too seriously all in one. And so instead of putting one mask on that's, takes action, and then it being very difficult to take it off, and then like maybe like hours later being able to put on the sense of humor mask, it's like a three-dimensional mask where you can flip in between just whatever is needed in that situation. And I could have kept this rigid plan, but me wanting to be someone that's more three-dimensional and being able to be more flexible, like you said, is like, okay, well, this is a great opportunity. Let me do this. And then not be hard on myself for not doing those things, because the time and place will come where that's appropriate. Right now, the time and place is appropriate to go to this event. I even canceled plans with you and Kat to go. Because I was
you invited us too.
True.
But it's just it's just so important to be able to recognize. And there's almost like a je ne sais quoi. Like by the time that you actually went through some sort of like template textbook of like what the description of a unique opportunity is, it might have already passed you by. It's just, you need to be able to recognize it when you see it.
Yeah, and that's going to be different for everyone. Like you may hear this and say like, oh, TEDx style event, that's not something that I'd be interested in. But somebody could have mentioned like a paint night to you, or someone could have mentioned like a salsa class to you, or whatever it is that scratches that itch for you.
Whatever type of opportunity would veto your pre-existing plan.
Totally. Like, and then like, especially along the lines of, if I keep living the same day over and over and over again, which is work on my book, work on the podcast, get this stuff out on social media, then I keep having this same experience, and that's not tip of the spear. what's tip of the spear, which is novel, and this discovery, like this, having this wider perspective on life, is someone invites you to an event that would be exciting for you and saying yes and showing up. And so I met a bunch of cool people from that experience. And I just wanted to bring up the guy that was facilitating it. His name is Julian. He's an awesome guy.
Fellow traveler for sure.
Reminds me of a lot of my friends that I admire most in the world. And that's kind of what I look at, is for people that I can trust moving forward and that I want to build relationships with, is like, what do they remind me about friends I already have that I admire? And then I would just make it easy to be friends with them. Because also I could just tell them, hey, you should hang out with my other buddy. And now we have like this great think tank going. But the thing that I learned from him, because it was a big event, a lot of speakers, a lot of lessons, what I took away from that experience was the three main bits that he spoke about, that he uses as kind of a life mantra, a life framework, which is show up, which I did, follow up, which I tend to neglect as being important, but I'm glad he emphasized that. And then to fill up, which is after these experiences, after meeting new people, make sure you take the time to step back and to do what we're doing right now, which is kind of ceremonial magic, the whole experience. What did you get out of it? What are you going to take away from it?
What's the wolf, dude?
How do you fill yourself back up? What's that wolf you want to bring back into the world? And so what I wanted to bring back into the world actually after that event was to show up, fill up, the show up, follow up, fill up framework. And when I think about Santa Teresa, the number one thing that was missing for me was the follow up, because I showed up a lot. And then I had a lot of opportunity that was created. A lot of doors were open for me. And then I was so stuck in my familiar past of all these projects that I was working on, these doors that I was already working through, that I missed opportunity that would have changed my life. But like I said, it couldn't have happened any other way. But I'm glad that it created the backdrop of learning from Julian, which is make sure you follow up.
Is that it? And like, as long as you're learning through the situations, there's no need to have regret, because it's like, it's what got you to this. It's what got you to this realization. And now that I've worked through it, I don't need to do what I did before. So I don't even need to like label them as mistakes as much as what I don't want to do now.
Yeah. Like that was like, it seems so simple: show up, follow up, fill up. But it's so profound for me now at this point.
And I think the show up, to kind of double click, because maybe not everyone knows it, like that would be the being present. That would be showing up and smiling, not being like scrolling on your phone the whole time. And it really is remarkable. Like it seems so obvious, but like smiling when you meet someone, like to smile and like try and show them that like goodwill that you have, which is to have goodwill. So you don't have to show it, you just have it. So it's like actually recognize that it's some other sentient, breathing, thinking, suffering, loving being that is confused and totally fucking lost.
We're all on the same page, just trying to figure it out. I remember going to the Salinas, and I met a bunch of fun people at the Salina as well in Puerto Viejo. So shout out to Salina Puerto Viejo for doing a great job. But I remember meeting this girl who we never actually hung out, but when we made eye contact for the first time, we both had massive smiles on our faces. And it was just like, from that moment on, I knew she was cool and she knew I was cool. And every time we saw each other, it was like, hey, how you been? Like, what's going on? She was only there for like a couple days. And there was no agenda, because I knew she had a boyfriend, but it was just like, it was so compelling to be drawn towards that positive energy of someone that is actually excited about where she is and what she's doing. And I just felt like I was mirroring that. And it made me excited. And I think I made her excited. And so it was just like it's kind of like a beautiful brainchild.
I think that's a great example of like the broader thing that we've been talking about. That's kind of been like a theme probably throughout this 2.5 months of Costa Rica, like the Rumi quote of what you're seeking is seeking you.
Totally.
And then like really clicking into that, and like with the what you're seeking is seeking you, in terms of what you're seeking, it might not even be that you wrote a checklist of what you're seeking, but it's the seeking within even the subconscious of like the way your thoughts are geared towards
your heart of hearts.
Your heart of hearts, that when you actually do realize that, you realize that that's what was the whisperings, the hinting of that. It was leading to that all along, even though you didn't see it.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of clues left along the path for you, right?
Yeah, dude.
All sorts of clues. Like
so many clues.
You and I were just joking yesterday, eating Caribbean chicken, smoking weed, and talking about our lives, and just like noticing all these themes that keep popping up. And
the synchronicities.
Yeah, pay attention to the themes. Like it's often more obvious than you think it is. It's often right underneath your nose.
Right under your
nose. But it takes paying attention to being present and putting your phone down.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a time and place for that. But I'm learning that I want to show up, so I want to be present, and I want to follow up, especially when I meet cool people.
Yeah.
Because I think meeting like-minded, cool people that like both of us are up to our own things. Right. We have our own things we're excited about, is where possibility really exists, man.
Yeah.
You meet a new person and there's just like unlimited possibility.
And then I think, and then like getting even to first principles, which is you kind of mentioned there when you met cool people, but something I've observed in you is that you do a good job. There's a quote, the measure of a man is how he treats. The measure of a man is how he treats small man. And there's like another quote that comes to mind where every man is, we get caught into thinking we have all the answers and we're doing the right thing. And by relation and relative, there's people that don't. And you meet people that maybe aren't the most socially savvy, or they don't have anything that you would seem like they can directly offer you to your life. And then there's the quote that every man is my superior in some way. And that I learned from them.
Totally.
And it's like getting even to the first principles, which I think you've done such a good job of, just being a good person and like being present and being happy, that you're going to naturally attract and like be around those kind of interactions that you want. But right under your nose, when you're talking to someone that maybe they can't contribute in like the most traditional sense to your life, and to not try and necessarily just discard that interaction as quickly as possible, and recognizing like that is like you too, and you'd want to treat them with just as much respect as you would treat the CEO person that you'd love to have a really important conversation with.
The cute girl.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Can you elaborate a little bit on what you mean by they are you?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like a different lens, and it broadens it to a more metaphysical plane of conversation.
Yeah, because like for us, it's like an ongoing, continuous dialogue where like sometimes when I say something on the show, you're like, let me deconstruct that, because you don't have
inside lingo on the outside world.
You don't have the perspective that it's been an ongoing conversation, not only for days, weeks, months, but literally years.
Yeah.
And so when you say something like, when you realize that they are you, well, do you mind just taking just like 60 seconds?
Yeah. So, I mean,
just to share where you're coming from when you say that.
Yeah. To give,
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm just,
there's lots of different lenses. I mean, like what I was joking about before is like everything is the same thing in a different way. So from a certain metaphysical claim, one might be able to argue that you are infinite consciousness pretending that you're not, the illusion of separateness. Thereby, everyone else is actually you as well. And so there's like an element of like, you'd want to treat them like yourself.
Yeah.
But that's through one lens. But even from a less woo-woo perspective though, even from like a more like just everyone can kind of relate, it's like, yeah, maybe they aren't as socially savvy. Maybe they don't have everything going for them.
Sure.
And then to treat them with respect, but then also there's also a certain dignity to treat those interactions where it's also not treating them with pity or patronizing either. It's like, it's actually realizing that there's no different. It's recognizing they actually are you. So it's like, yes, from a certain lens, they can't offer you, and maybe you should treat everyone with respect. It's like, yeah, but the first principle is that you should hear that we're even like rebuttaling against myself, is that they have nothing, the premise is they have nothing to offer you, but they are you, thereby you should treat them well. It's like, well, that whole equation is bullshit, because maybe they are you, that's a different conversation. They definitely have something that should interest you. They should definitely have something that should interest you there.
Yeah, I actually did learn that with with being in Laruca, which is a hostel in Puerto Viejo, it's Laruca, home away from home, and it really does feel that way.
Yeah.
Where I never actually got to know Dave, who's one of the actual owners of Laruca, and I heard whisperings from other people about the things he's interested in, but I never took the time to get to know him and ask him what he's excited about. Because if I would have known, then I probably would have went fishing and spearfishing with the guy. But I didn't know that he owned a boat, didn't know he loved fishing, didn't know that he would be interested in things like that. So it's exactly what you're talking about. Is like, well, how do you get to what is somebody excited about?
Yeah.
How do you get to what are they interested in? Because like the conversation we continuously have here while we're traveling is, where are you from?
And that's,
what do you do?
Everyone can relate.
How
And
long
the
you
small
gonna be
talk, right?
here?
And people always like, the answer that people seem to have is, if you don't want to have small talk, don't have small talk, and they just disregard the conversation. It's like, or recognize that they're a lot more with things, like they're just like the concept of Sonder, the vivid realization that every passerby has a life as vivid and complex as your own, and you might just be an extra in it.
I like that.
And it's like, yeah, maybe it's fun to have the conversations around like where you're from, and you don't need to like totally shit on that dialogue. Like sometimes it's good, but sometimes you get to a point where you've done it too much and it's like a diminishing returns, and you're going through the motions. You're going through the motions, which is a barrier to you actually being present in that conversation. Totally. And I think we underestimate
autopilot.
Yeah, autopilot.
I'm not present if I'm
yeah, exactly. And it's like, I think we underestimate the imaginations and like interests of others, where if there's some random idea that you're having in your head around like for example, anything we've talked about here, but anything you're interested in, you can just we got to give people more the benefit of the doubt of, you can just kind of spring on a random question to someone like that, and to some stranger, and have an open dialogue about that. You don't need to have you don't even need to know their name, to have that conversation first. Like you can, but you don't have to wait till you've gone through these certain checklists of formalities to get to a depth of conversation. You can just jump in.
Sometimes all you need is like a sentence or two of context.
Yes. And
then to share the question and say, what are your thoughts on
something like so this? The other day I was thinking about how I wasn't being present enough, and I was recognizing how I wasn't. And then one of the ways I've been trying not to do it is, when I'm about to check my phone for the time, I'm like, wait, unless there's something very pressing on my mind, I don't need to check it right now, and I can just be present. And then kind of float that out there, and they're going to have an opinion either way. And you know what? Once in a while, someone's going to be like, they're not about it. And so what?
Yeah, well, and he's got a watch too, so I don't know what the hell he's doing.
It's probably, I haven't watched, nobody, I guarantee you, like less than 10% of people with watches have their watches for the time.
I thought that was interesting. Yeah, I know
it's a grandfather clock
as
watch
an accessory. That was something that I took away from meeting Eleanor, who's super cool. We met through our friend Mike Maluski. All of them have done Landmark, so it's personal development program out of Toronto, but they're global as well.
What's going to happen is going to happen. What's not going to happen is not going to happen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. This is what happened, and this is what you're making it mean. I hear you, dude. So, but it's just cool, like paying attention to things like that. As an example, like I already have, in a way, a connection to somebody that's done their men's weekend. Like we hold that as something, as shared experience. Someone that's done Landmark, like we have a shared experience.
It's like you've read the same book.
The commonality.
It's like, to kind of tie this as an example in a way that you're going to understand what you're saying. It's like having Landmark of the men's weekend, as he's making a connection here, is like a commonality in the same way that reading Harry Potter. Where if you're talking to someone and they're not really understanding it, okay, well, you know how like Hagrid was like by the Forbidden Forest, right? And they're like, I see. So it's like a frame of reference, like a mutual shared past, even though it seemingly hasn't, that you can kind of make a connection.
Yeah, in communication, people understand only based off of their experiences, right? So
it's a shared experience.
If you have a shared experience like Harry Potter, you can use that as a tool for communication. Like I remember we met that girl Hannah at Laruca, and she's from the UK, and I just said like, what was the phenomena like growing up in the UK? Were you interested in Harry Potter? Like how was that experience? And she just talked my ear off for like 45 minutes about how much she loved Harry Potter. We were joking about like which house she would be in and what the house parties would be like if she was in Slytherin.
Dude,
she's all
here's a hot take. Here's a hot take. The phenomenon of Harry Potter is more magical than any of the magic that theoretically existed within the world of Harry Potter.
The phenomena
of Harry Potter was more magical than any of the magic that it depicted fictionally.
And that goes back to, I don't remember, maybe it was G.K. Chesterton, where he says like the apple in the story is golden to remind you of how magical it is to have a green
So let me backtrack there for a sec. So he talks about how the reason why fiction is the most popular form of literature is because it's often more true than reality itself. So we create fiction to suit ourselves. Reality is just kind of happening. And the value of fiction and fantasy and fairy tale is to remind us of something that we've taken for granted.
Yeah.
So granted.
It's like losing your phone and realizing how great it was to have a phone.
And it's like, it reminds you of the first discovery that is the human experience that we've taken for granted. So the example that he gives in it is, in a fairy tale, the apple is gold to remind you for one brief moment of when you found out that apples could also be green. And in a fairy tale,
like, holy shit.
I know, right? And I'm like,
wow.
I'm reading it. I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me.
That's wonderful.
And in the fairy tale, the rivers run with wine to remind you for one brief moment. And you can picture being a kid when you found out they ran with water.
And it's just like this stream. It's like, where does it come from?
Yeah,
where
it's like this.
Go?
It's like, wait, it's just an accumulation of a droplet, and that's what it does if it accumulates.
That is such a trip.
It's such a trip when you try and deconstruct.
You realize that every grain of sand makes up this beach, and there's just infinite amounts of grains of sand.
And then it's infinitely down and then infinitely out, and it's just like that wonder that is beaten out of us from a certain lens, from just the being stuck in the survival game.
Alan Watts talks about that a lot. It's like, we need to survive.
Yeah.
In The Overthinker, the last line is,
we need to survive. It's like we get so stuck on surviving that we forget what makes surviving worthwhile.
Yeah, I really thought it was astute. You posted, it was a couple of weeks ago, but it was like, basically the sickness of today is like, do you remember
the sickness
what it was?
of the mind. It was one of the oldest Zen poems. The sickness of the mind is, paraphrasing, something along the lines of being constantly stuck in right and wrong. It's just constantly in this state of like trying, that's right, that's wrong. I'm going to try and uphold this right and get rid of this wrong. And this constant duality, this division of appraising everything as this is good. Oh no, it's good, but it'd be bad if I didn't have it. So I need to make sure that I have it.
Yeah.
And now you're squeezing the bunny, that your pet bunny, and fucking killing it. So
you're strangling
him. Put him down.
Put him down, mister. You're too strong.
And then
it's like the guy from fucking Of Mice and Men.
And then this is
people's necks.
And this is a great example of I'd say the number one throughout the 2.5 months of Costa Rica, the number one thought idea that I've been meditating, thinking, pondering, playing with. Rumi's Garden.
Rumi's Garden,
which is
baby.
Somewhere there between right and wrong, there's a garden. I will meet you there. If that isn't like the first principle state of like, to get there, everything else will just fall into its natural groove. It just seems
that's so funny.
I wrote. Oh, you
that's
asked.
So funny, bro. Because like the realization that was kind of the most important theme of Costa Rica was when Iain was sitting on a hammock after like an all night party in this like mountaintop villa, and and the owner of the villa comes up to him and he's like, "Hey, you want to smoke some DMT?"
And I'm like, yes, I do. But in terms you asking me what I wrote about on the bus last night, it started. It was going to be like poetry, and then I just kind of framed its way into what probably will be just the style of my prose, where I just wrote.
We're talking about prose.
Yeah, I said, and then this is what I'm getting at in terms of like going for the direct thing, like not beating around, like getting to the key that unlocks all of it, that you don't need to worry about trying to unlock the trivial surface level shit, because you can get to the fucking root of it first. And everything, it just makes way more sense. I wrote, wandering, slandering, flattering, pandering, gerrymandering, take a swing at the jugular of your dreams, allowing for anything to occur just as it needs to. What you what you will come to find is that anything can happen at any point, at any time, if and only when you allow it to, besides the times where it happens regardless, of course. What is it that is stressing you out? It's petty concerns grappling desperately for your attention and survival.
Yeah, that reminds me of, I was trying to watch Joe Dispenza on the bus ride. I downloaded it. So if Gaia, I know you're not listening, but if anyone from Gaia ever listens, your downloads don't work. I downloaded 5 episodes of the show, and then I went to play it while I was offline, and they wouldn't play. Yeah. So anyway, I was going to listen to Joe Dispenza, but he talks about the generous present moment being the key to unlocking your destiny, where he says virtually everybody is living in the familiar past, a conditioned past, which is what you've said is your personality becomes your personal reality of just these conditioned responses over time to stimulus that becomes how you live your life. Yeah. Or in a predictable future, right? Which is they're trying to control the variables of the future, which reminds me of Seneca and reading him, where he said everyone's trying to arrange the future which really all they can control is the moment they're in. Yeah. And that just reminds me of that is like
all your signs point to here and now.
Yeah, it's like it'll all unfold exactly how it's meant to be if you just arrive in the moment. Yeah. Do you arrive at Rumi's garden?
You can arrive at Rumi's garden. You can arrive at the present moment being the intersection between everything and always. It's like you can decide when to arrive, thereby putting everything else, all the worries and stress into context for this. It's like all the worries and stresses and seeming mistakes and regrets and trials and tribulations is the setting of the table. It's folding the napkin and the fork and the knife and the spoon and the bowl and the teacup. It's just for the present moment that you're sitting in right now. And in terms of like the fucking majesty of fucking J.R.R. Tolkien, in terms of like Alan Watts connecting,
Lord of the Rings.
you can't surprise yourself. Yeah. You can't surprise yourself.
True.
Well, another thing to reinforce is my fucking favorite quote from Return of the King, the last book of the last book of Lord of the Rings.
Get some references mixed
up. The book, here. Not the movie. It says,
hear that, everybody?
And then I think faith is like what is realizing the journey what I'm about to tell you is unfolding for you for the reaction that is going to come out of it, which is many folk like to know what's to be laid on the table before the meal is ready. However, those who have labored to prepare the feast like to keep their secret, for wonder makes the words of praise louder.
Wonder
makes
the words of praise
louder.
And that just reminds me of like, if when we die, it all is just inevitable ecstasy after we die, we're going to be we're going to be patting ourselves on our backs because we're going to say, wow, you did a really good job of restricting yourself so you didn't know you were God.
Because think about all the stories. Think about Harry Potter. So that was the Lord of the Rings quote. Think about Harry Potter. Think about travel, archetypes, all these kind of things. What we think we want is not what we want. Like there's a disconnect between the general sense of what we think we want and what we really want. We want the unknown, but we want the fucking adventure.
We want the close shave.
Like imagine it was Harry Potter and it was just like, it was the Philosopher's Stone and, Voldemort ended up in the back of Professor Quill's head. And he's like, yo, what up, bitch? You done? Cast a spell. That's it. And then he's
like in his first year and somehow knows already how to kill him.
And he's just riding through like fucking chilling with the boys at Hogwarts. And then he just like retires and they're just eating the endless meals that the goblins that the little house elves are making. And they all just go off into the sunset.
Fat and rich and
that's not what you want. That's what you think you want. And that's creating you want the close shave and the drama and the difficulty. But Rumi's garden, you can go into this at different stages. I literally just posted on my Instagram before this.
Shout out if you're not following Ian Gabriel on Instagram.
I mean,
get in there, get the ad.
I wrote blue pill or the red pill with or cut, like crossed out. So it's like you can remember and forget whenever you want. So at any point when everything's getting too frustrating, you know, you can just go to Rumi's garden and chill for a bit and get outside of the illusion of right and wrong and the strife and the difficulty, and you can just be there and become and that recharge, that reprieve is going to allow you to go back into the fight of whatever journey and dance and battle that you're going through, and to be the best version of yourself for that. And I think we get caught into thinking that we have to have just like this one context that exists in all frames. It's like, you can go vigorously climb the mountain, and then at any point you can go chill in the
zoom in, zoom out,
zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, zoom in.
Close the door, don't look over
open
there.
The door, close the window, turn on the lights.
Like drink cacao or
different.
You get to curate the experience that you want to have in the present moment.
And then it's a dance between like.
Don't go overboard.
You doing it like from a front of mind perspective creation, and then surrendering to what you're seeking is seeking you.
Yeah,
and that you don't have to do it. You literally don't have to do it all on your own. Like there's things that are working with you beyond what you think. Like for example, the fact that we have an Airbnb, we pressed a couple buttons to get here. We went to the wrong place. Then we called Uber.
The Uber was
then,
so wild.
Then Uber we picked us up person who drives a car. They have this whole life. Now they take us to our location. Then I ordered food. I don't have a restaurant. Restaurant got the food from the cow, and they made the burger, and then they got it to the delivery driver, and then brought to me, and I ate it from like a couple buttons. And I think we get so caught in like this
fucking alchemy.
It's alchemy, and it's also realizing like, and for example, we're kind of in this thread of dialogue of like the hippie and like the like man, like the far out spirituality, which often tends to be like, yo, fuck you corporations, fuck you. Well, and maybe there's legitimate qualms within them, but they're also providing pretty sick fucking value. Yes, they might be stockpiling in their freaking like Scrooge McDuck all their coins, but the way they got their coins is by allowing ease and value to so many people. So there's problems for sure, but also realize that these things aren't in opposition to you in the direct sense, that they are benefiting at trying to create value.
Yeah, you look at Harry Potter and everyone at Hogwarts being in the Grand Hall, and they snap their fingers and all of a sudden this meal is prepared, and it's like, we kind of have that. It's
pretty much, that's what I'm saying by
cell phone right now.
It is.
The meal is prepared.
It might as well be like, what's your definition of magic?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like a couple buttons.
Because if you have it being like some supernatural thing that we can't explain, like, well, I mean, how many people can explain how you're hearing these words right now? Unless you're a specific sound engineer, then you probably have no idea how these words are being transmitted into your brain right now.
I'm not even convinced this recording is going to get saved. I don't even know.
Is it? Oh my God, who knows?
Not sure.
But it's magic. Yeah, like, how is it not magic? Like the fact that we can sit down and read Seneca from thousands of years ago, and his thoughts, like his inner dialogue, is making its way into like the bullshitty, clunky, repetitive thought loops that we've kind of come up on our own. And then we can, hey, yeah, you think you've learned a lot in your couple of years and decades. Well, here's someone that's fucking done it, and they've refined these thoughts and take counsel with these great ideas.
Out with the best philosophers. Yeah.
I've been hanging out with the best philosophers. It's like the speech that Christopher Hitchens gave that had the conversations worth having. The conversations worth having.
I was showing this to Lisa yesterday. Pardon? I was showing this to Lisa yesterday because you had made a video about it before, where it's like you can't choose your parents, but you can choose whose children you are.
Yeah. And Christopher Hitchens is one of those, man. And he said, he's like, wouldn't you like to meet Shakespeare? And he's like, some idol that you have. And he said, I can meet Shakespeare, because he's immortal in the works that he's left behind, and to meet him would almost certainly be a disappointment. But the reason why I thought of that is I was listening to Ram Dass.
That's so funny.
was listening.
That's so funny.
It's
because
fucking
like everyone's gonna listen to these recordings and like you're gonna write poetry and books and things like that, and then like to meet Ian Gabriel was
actually
definitely a fucking disappointment. Trust me. Nah, best story ever told.
It reminded to kind of formation of that thought. I remember listening to Ram Dass, and he was talking about
what a fucking loser, man.
Yeah, what a loser. Yeah,
loser,
Ram Dass, spiritual like leader,
loser,
dude. Man. And he was talking about how this one night he was drunk at some temple with Alan Watts, who's like my favorite influence. And he's like, one night I'm getting hammered with Alan Watts, and Alan Watts looks at me. He's like, you know what your problem is, Dick? You're too attached to nothingness, or like non-attachment. And then I was thinking, I'm like, damn, wouldn't that be so cool if I could get drunk or like think with Alan Watts? Yeah. And then I'm like, I already have for dozens of hours.
I've been on hundreds of walks with Jim Rohn.
Yes. Yeah, like
hundreds of walks. He has hours and hours and hours of lectures on Audible.
Yeah.
And you can download it for $50 and you can hang out with Alan, or you can hang out with Jim Rohn.
And the point isn't that there isn't some,
as long as you want.
And the point isn't that there isn't, like, if you actually met them in some theoretical sense, that they wouldn't take you an extra step further than already exists to you, like
some part
perhaps,
of presence on.
But you're talking about like the 99% of the value that they can create is already there in front of you to take into. Like it's right there. Like you can.
Yeah. It reminds me of like when we were in Vancouver in 2020, we did a road trip across Canada. We had this epic weekend for Patrick Deloso's birthday. And we went out to the club that night. That was the first time in my whole life that I blacked out. But I woke up with an exciting experience, and I had to drive this girl back to the airport or back to her place. And when I came back to the hotel room, I heard music. So I was like, oh, they're having a good time. And I took my camera out, and it was literally just you and Patrick Deloso vibing. And I'm talking about like real vibe. Like we were in a dope hotel. Patrick really hooked us up. When we told him about BC, he was basically like, fucking boys, I already have the hotel room booked, don't worry. So I can see you guys like looking out at the ocean. Yeah. And you're sitting there hanging out. And Drake was playing when I first got there. Yeah. And I was taking a video of you guys, and you were kind of just like vibing, and then you saw me out of the corner of your eye, you stood up and you started like dancing to Drake. And then it just reminds me of like you saying you can download swag. Absolutely. You can download people's consciousness. So it's like in the same way I can download philosophy from Alan or Jim. You can we were talking about that last night. It's like maybe you don't want to listen to sad boy songs all the time, but if you want to download some swag from Gunna, maybe you could listen to Gunna's albums
25 times
and over
and taking the micro intonations. And there's almost like there's like a mixture of the analytical breakdown of like he did this and I can incorporate this, and then also because it's so ethereal and so not just one thing, it's like a combination of all these things working. It's like just surrendering to a certain influence of osmosis, of just like allowing that consciousness in its like entirety to seep in. And just allowing that to like mastermind. It's literally mastermind. Like you can create the masterminds that you want. Like we've been doing this dialogue together, and like having this dialogue with the greatest thinkers in history, the best thoughts with the best idea, and just like letting it like shape and create and turn it to its own thing. And it's like what we're doing this, you know, we've been doing this probably around 15 or so, give or take, of our podcast. And we were kind of like being hard on ourselves at like the first couple times. Like, bro, we need to talk. It's like our ratios aren't perfect. It's like, yeah, we did a couple conversations and it's not perfect yet. What the fuck?
How dare we?
And I think like as we're getting, it's just gonna get really good in terms of the mutual sharing storytelling. The art form of a shared telling of a story.
That's my favorite part is when I say, you know, it was really fun when we went to Santa Teresa. We never went to the bar on Thursday night. Yeah, because like everyone was talking about the club on Thursday is lit, like it's gonna be so cool. I had basically two chances, 2 different Thursdays. I never went, and so when we came to Puerto Viejo, I was like, they said Wednesday night is the fun night at Johnny's place. And so what you were saying was like getting to mutual story sharing. How fun was Johnny's on Wednesday?
That was
fucking fun, man.
So
was such a good time.
Yeah.
I'm gonna grab some more beer.
Yeah, it started out where we were with our we went to dinner with our friend Eleanor as our friend. Yeah, it's absolutely pouring outside. So if it seems like we're yelling, we're not, but like that's why.
Yeah, we got frozen beer.
We got frozen beer. And we went to dinner with our friend Eleanor and her friend who she met at this surf camp, along with these like really cool Chilean dudes. One of them is like a music producer and like creator and like apparently big in the Chilean music industry.
Why not?
Well, I mean, yeah. And anyway, then we go out to this bar. I think we might be about ready to wrap this up. I realize I'm just like not able to. It's loud.
Yeah, well, let's finish this story about Johnny.
Sure. You want to take it over?
Well, not yet.
All right. So I don't know how to complete the story. So if you're listening and you needed to get through the next 45 seconds until Jonathan returns from the washroom to pick up the baton that was left on the ground so that you could hear this bullshit interlude of how to get it from the putting down of the baton to picking up.
Sometimes it's not as...
Jonathan's back.
Sometimes it's not as important as what you say, but how you say it. And
Yes.
like interludes like that is definitely more important on how you say it than what... Because it's really just, it's just bullshit and filler.
In terms of learning Spanish, I would say one of the things that I've really learned from Spanish, one of the rules about reading Spanish in the words is that you say the entire word.
Yeah.
It's just very, very, very easy.
Every syllable,
every
pronounceable part of the word should be enunciated.
So if it says like, just everyone knows this, gracias. It's like,
gracias.
Gracias. Like you're
Buenos
enunciating.
dias.
You're enunciating every letter. Like there's no silent letters, right?
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, and that's where I get hung up is because that's what the principle is. That's what they say. And then you get people behind their masks who don't clue into you're not a Spanish speaker, and then their word just sounds like it's just like all squished together.
Not to go too off onto that thing yet, but in terms of like think about the alchemy of like the autism of that interlude to now be able to discuss the intonations. We talked about downloading the intonations of swag from Aguna, but it's like you can download the swag from Spanish to enunciate the different letters. And we just alchemized that by, I don't know how we got to this conversation, but somehow we did.
Well, I mean, it's just like opening doors and closing doors. Like one of the most important lessons that I learned from our public speaking mentor, Ryan McGurr, was slow the fuck down. And part of the benefit of slowing down is you actually get to enunciate the words. So his two big tips with public speaking is talk louder.
I thought you were going to say two other big tips.
Yeah. I mean, I think we might have talked about that
at some point. Anyway,
the two most important public speaking tips from one of the best public speakers that I've ever met in my entire life, one of the most compelling communicators is slow the fuck down and just speak louder generally and project, learn to speak from your diaphragm versus, trying to stress your vocal cords. But I don't know how we got to that other than, kind of making sure you enunciate every word. What I was just going to say about Johnny's is, man, how shitty was that DJ? That DJ was so trash. Like people had talked about it before.
I don't even want to carry that consciousness.
You
just gotta kill it.
Yeah,
it's dead.
Fucking bit.
Anything. Okay, so
anytime you interrupt the song because you think you're more important than the song is not working.
Okay, so what we're gonna do, I mean, once we're done this podcast, I think it makes sense to play some Above and Beyond set and fucking vibe because
there's no vocals in that at all.
I think
they don't interrupt their own music at all.
With psychedelics, rites of passage, drugs, certain peak experiences, therapy, healing, all these kind of words to kind of give context for what I'm about to say. I read How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan, journalist on psychedelics and its role. And he did mushrooms with Paul Stamets, who was one of the guys.
They did mushrooms together?
They did.
That's so
like
cool.
they did like a small amount. And he was talking about how Paul Stamets hates the term
shrooms.
Shrooms, but also more in a poignant thing, he hates the term recreational use, as if recreational is a negative pejorative, as if for us to not pejorative, a negative connotation, as if to like play above and beyond and fucking dance in the rain on acid from a recreation, as if that like somehow takes away the significance of it, as if that isn't self-evidently significant.
We're imbuing fucking meaning inside.
Yeah.
You know, we're taking all of our past experiences and inserting it into this present moment. So really the point of this podcast was to come full circle, like Iain had mentioned, like what's the wolf that we want to bring back? You know, I opened this story about Johnny's just to say how fun it was, because the contrast.
It is absolutely like torrential downpour right now.
And it was, that's funny, because it was torrential downpour that night at Johnny's as well. But just the DJ was so trash, and it was the perfect contrast to when you just let music play and let music be self-evident of how fun it is. As soon as Johnny's closed, basically some dude with a massive speaker in his trunk just like rolled up and like on this strip that was just do-it-yourself dance floor, and then people just congregated to this reggaeton music, and we just went off for an hour.
And then I was like tired towards the end of the night, and there was like a food stand, and I went and got this Caribbean chicken. I paid extra for more chicken and rice and beans and coconut. And I was back on the dance floor, and people were laughing at me. I'm on the dance floor dancing with chicken, rice, and beans, and just shoveling it down my throat like it was my fucking job.
Some of the most fun I've had on dance floors is like with food and oranges or like M&Ms or just like using it as a dance prop.
I think it's very occurrent to me that we are done for now, but then we can pick it up later if we feel so compelled. I'm just like,
I'm not done yet.
You're not done yet?
I'm not done yet.
All right, fucking give him your I'm not leaving. Give him the soliloquy. I can be.
I mean, but I'm done, but I'm done. But let's not click stop until we come to
some sort of full circle completion.
Again, it's really just about discovery and learning. Like as an example, in Cancun, we had a ceremonial closure to our experience being in Mexico. We're bringing a similar take, but just a different spin on it here in Costa Rica, and it's going to continue. But our life seems to be about finding meaning, and finding meaning seems to be about creating meaning, which means there's no inherent meaning, and you could get sad about that, or you could get excited about it and say, I'm going to alchemize meaning. And one of the things we're doing is just like reconciling our entire trip and all the experiences we had with this closure of this podcast, with the doing of these psychedelic drugs.
And we realized together the framework, like the gestalt of our friendship it's just so obviously abundantly clear that us together and like the mastermind of our thoughts and lived experiences and documentation from like a holistic contribution to humanity, society, however you want to put it, is so night and day. Us together of like, and we're gonna do things separate, but like together, and like the way that grows together than just us doing it completely independently. It's just it's so obvious. Like in that you reference just a different spin on it, which is an essay that I wrote like last summer. And then as I checked my phone for the time, I got my, for what is my context at 6 p.m. every day. That is always a good place to be like, what is my context in this situation? Which is your context is what spin are you putting on this?
I also like just the zooming in and zooming out, because as an example, you mentioned gestalt in our relationship, and it's like I have on my own circle up, and it's impossible to disentangle the benefit that you've contributed to what that's
just by the fact that you said disentangle,
what that's created
disentangle
in circle up, and then together we have till the end, and then like even broader above that, where we incorporate other friends and our other relationships with Streka.
Oh, by the way, I wrote down when you were talking before.
Self-evident that this is the best story you've ever fucking heard, ladies and gentlemen.
Whether it ends up being the word Streka or not, like there's this community network that we're talking about. But in terms of like, what do we call it? Like, what do we call our members? Isn't it obvious?
Fellow travelers.
Isn't it obvious?
Yeah.
I wrote that down.
Fellow travelers. Dude.
I remember
we're just on a trip. Everyone's on a trip.
It's like realizing we're in this like game, this like one lens to look at this life is life's a trip, and it's this journey that you're going on. And it's like, you know, there's there's different players and different people along the journeys. And there's just people that are fellow travelers with you.
Yeah.
Where it's like you guys are just
self-evident when you
it's
meet.
self-evident that you guys are gonna like contribute things to each other's lives. So if it wasn't for the fact that the universe is trying to scream us down from this podcast right now,
turn the podcast
the universe is like,
off.
stop it,
You've spoken
stop
enough.
it, you've spoken. We can pick this up later, but the rain is screaming at us right now, and we will listen to we will heed the omens.
Yeah.
We will heed the omens.
The most important thing that I learned from Costa Rica was to follow up.
And what you're seeking is seeking you. Damn, we're high.
I'm not high.
Dude, I'm not high, bro. Like, this is my natural
Dude,
state.
I am just in a constant state of overwhelming abundance. Just my cup is constantly overflowing. It's just in a permanent state of embarrassing
I think,
myself.
actually, by the way, the Rumi's Garden.
If I just keep this going, he'll just keep going. That's kind of the...
Listen, Mark Nguyen, the quote that when we were on Christmas Day in the water with Amr, him, and the two of us, the quote that I said of his is very Rumi's Garden-esque, where it's the...
Floating along was enough.
Yeah, so it was... they swam into the ocean of possibilities. Here, they could make decisions about the future. They decided not to.
Jeez, what a heat.
Dude, that is like honestly up. Like I would say, like Mark Nguyen. It's literally in
terms of like a punchline in a great comedic stand-up joke. It's misdirection.
In terms of like wisdom, in terms of like wisdom of something, like it's literally like at the same. Like there's nothing you could take away from that between like a Rumi's poem. Like that poem is more significant than like a lot of like it's literally that good of a thought.
Keep doing it, Mark.
It actually is like genius.
Yo, planting the seed, Vietnam 2021, like motorcycling around the entire country.
I hold that quote in the same esteem as a Rumi quote or like any of like the Socrates quote. Like they could make decisions about the future. They decided not to. Dude, they decided not to.
And then what?
Fucking insane. And so they swam out into the ocean of possibilities. Here, they could make decisions about the future. They decided not to. Floating along was enough to fill their souls to the brim. Dude, like that's actually fucking like insane. Anyway, burnt me on the incense. That was all part of it. We done, and this was the portion of the wolf that we have to give you at this juncture in time.
Sometimes maybe we should do less drugs.